What's up? It's an exciting time to be alive. Welcome to Common Censored. My name is Lee Camp. I'm joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff.
And that was Pyre from her new EP, No Solo. And there might be a music video coming out soon. And by might, I mean is. Awesome. Like I said, exciting time to be alive.
For no other reason, that reason. Make sure y'all are signed up to my email list if you want to get that information.
Oh my God, it's so good.
To when the music video comes out. I just tweeted about it, so you can sign up via the link there. Yeah.
You got to see it, guys. You really got to see it. Don't not see it. Coming out soon. But all right, we got a lot to talk about. We're gonna dig into it. A story that thank you all of you who joined the live stream this past weekend. It was great to see everybody come out for that. And we covered a lot of stories. Covered Mike Gravel. Talked a lot about him. Talked about a little bit about Assange, the latest key witness in the Assange case, admitting that he lied in order to help the FBI's case against Assange. And if you want those stories, go check out youtube.com/momentofclarity. That's where the live streams are. But we got some other stories here. One we did not get into on the live stream, which is obviously a huge story, is that President Biden bombed Syria and Iraq, claiming it's a defensive, quote-unquote, move against Iran-backed, quote-unquote, militias. And I'm adding a lot of quotes because you gotta wrap the bullshit in something so it doesn't smell as loudly.
Smell as loudly.
Yes,
I like that.
I'm a poet.
No, I like that. Sometimes the smell is so oppressive, it's loud.
The smell of bullshit is very fucking loud, especially in this moment. I like it. I mean, so now the calls against to get out of Iraq and Syria are growing. I mean, I have yet to meet anyone who thinks, oh, yeah, this is great. Oh, yeah, this protected America. Oh, yeah, this is fucking defensive. No, it's offensive in more than
in all
one
of the ways.
Respect of the word. It's fucking offensive. And not even to just talk about the fact that, saying Joe Biden bombed Syria and Iraq, ordered the bombing of Syria and Iraq, is like saying, my grandpa who watches Wheel of Fortune reruns all day long at 97 years old and thinks my name is Larry. He ordered us to go back into World War II and reenact it. Like him, you're out of it, grandpa, ordering something is equivalent to Biden ordered this. So it really is the Biden administration, along with the military-industrial complex, bombing innocent, largely, well, they're all innocent in one respect or another, but they're largely, the people that are hit with this are not even fucking people with guns, largely.
Although, can I just say real quick, would anybody, even the French, be terribly surprised if we just showed up and stormed the beaches of Normandy again?
I don't think so.
Wouldn't everyone just kind of be like, yeah, that's about right for where the U.S. is at this point?
Yeah, is anyone stunned when the U.S. storms anything?
Right. So I feel like they'd just be like, yeah, no, that's
we're doing it again. All right. Same with the Germans, even though they've been so peaceful the past few years. I still think everybody like, the Germans are doing it again. Shit. But this bombing, and it's so, if the lies are so offensive, the idea that it's somehow defensive, the idea that these are Iran-backed militias, which, by the way, they threw in there for two reasons. One is because there's been so much decades of propaganda against Iran that they can say Iran-backed anything, and just go after it. So Iran-backed pudding pops, and so then we've set fire to all the pudding pops because they were Iran-backed, and everybody's like, oh, good call. Because it's just aggressive propaganda. They know they can say anything's Iran-backed and nobody will doubt it. The mainstream media won't question it.
Well, and it makes it okay. And
makes it okay.
I should say, contrary to how the U.S. operates in these places, these, quote-unquote militias were operating legally inside of Iraq and Syria at the invitation of those countries' governments and people.
And they were fighting ISIS.
Right. Contrary to what the U.S. is doing, which in both Iraq and Syria, the countries are like, could you please get the fuck out of here? No one wants you here. And the U.S. is like, but how about we bomb the people who are trying to fight the actual terrorists that we created, but then we have to keep bombing in order to keep creating terrorists, because the war on terror is a self-perpetuating machine of evil and death and destruction, which we really quite like because it gets money for our military-industrial complex.
Exactly.
That's the longer version of that.
The Defense Department Press Secretary John Kirby claimed these strikes were designed to limit the risk of escalation.
No, it's designed to ensure escalation because, again, in order to fight terrorists, you have to create terrorists.
So another aspect of this that, of course, the mainstream media is barely or not at all talking about is the fact that this is illegal. It's illegal in all respects. It's illegal under U.S. law. It's illegal under international law. It's just blatantly illegal in every form, and yet that isn't even discussed nowadays, because nowadays it is just expected that the U.S. empire will do whatever the fuck it wants. There will be endless war. There will be endless bombing. The president is never really questioned on whether he, or if there were a she could do these things. It just goes on endlessly. And, you know, we and I talked in a live stream as well about they're going to repeal, or say they claim they're going to repeal, and Biden supports this, the 2002 AUMF, but not the 2001, which means they can continue doing all of their endless wars. So it's a ruse to act like they're getting rid of this authorization of use of military force, but they're not really. And it allows this continued and endless lawlessness, which is not just in terms of bombing, but is in terms of endless surveillance of American citizens, in terms of the prison industrial complex, the lawlessness by the U.S. government, ripping up the Iran nuclear deal.
Which, by the way, there were ongoing talks regarding the Iran nuclear deal at the same time as Biden first seized Iranian news websites and then bombed these militias in Iraq and Syria. So that's for kids listening at home. That's not how we do diplomacy.
Yeah,
that is the opposite. And there's one more note I remember. Glenn Greenwald posted about this regarding legality that you just mentioned, Lee. And he writes, "I know it's boring to note, but Biden had no legal authorization to bomb these targets, making it illegal. But Obama bombed Libya after the House voted against doing so. And few of the sacred rule of law mavens cared." So again, Glenn Greenwald is making that connection between presidents and between, you know, the red thread that continuously pushes U.S. empire and hegemony and violence across the globe, regardless of who the fuck is sitting in the White House. And Richard Medhurst also pointed out, who does a lot of commentary on U.S. imperialism, quoted...
He might be on Redacted VIP next week.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting.
Just saying.
He wrote on Twitter, quote, "In this capacity, Biden is practically no different than Trump, who murdered Soleimani and Abu Mahdi. The only U.S. interests they are defending are their proxy terrorist groups of head choppers. What a despicable bunch." And so whether it's Glenn Greenwald making the connection between Obama and Biden, or Medhurst making the connection between Trump and Biden, the song remains the same, right? You know, Biden's been in office just for not even half a year, and has already perpetuated this kind of violence. And 5 months. And I also wanted to share this, which is, you know, just further accentuating what a shitheel Biden is. This is from a a Twitter account called Holding Biden Accountable, which that would be nice. 5 months in, Biden is still overcrowding children in disease-ridden camps where they're sexually abused, fed raw meat, and not given medical attention. It is a national embarrassment that when the number of kids in cages went up, the public outcry went down. And I think that is also very indicative of the issue that we have in this country, where if there's a blue MAGA hat, a blue dumpster fire in charge of the White House, so many people turn around and go home. And it is fucking despicable. It is unacceptable. And it is really something that has to be addressed, like, publicly and, you know, in our communities, like calling people out or calling people in, or however you want to fucking phrase that. It's very important that people draw these connections, not necessarily just between like a Biden and Obama, but a Biden and Trump, because the similarities are so stark and the differences are fucking minuscule and don't matter. The fact that Biden's administration is the most colorful doesn't fucking matter when it's still doing the same horrific shit. It doesn't matter if it's a woman, a trans man, an LGBTQ, black, Asian. It doesn't fucking matter who's doing
albino?
it. If an albino trans woman vegan is bombing people, it doesn't fucking matter, right? What matters is what's actually taking place, the difference in legislation, the difference in policy, and guess what? There isn't any.
And I will read a different paragraph of Glenn Greenwald, since we're quoting from the same thing. But it's a great point. Having to watch the Bush, Cheney, and Obama-Biden operatives who ushered in this permanent state of illegality and lawless wars prance around during the Trump years as noble defenders of the sacred rule of law, right? That's what to go astray from the quote. That's what we were seeing, right? Was them jumping up and down all day on your mainstream media about how Trump was violating law. So, to go back to the quote, noble defenders of this sacred rule of law, all while being celebrated and profiting greatly, was nauseating in the best of times. American elites do not care about the rule of law or the Constitution. Ignoring it is how they empower themselves at the expense of the citizenry. That is why very few will care about the fact that Biden, indulging the fiction for a moment that it was he, ordered the bombings on two countries without the slightest whiff of legal authority to do so. Greenwald points out that when they announced this thing, they didn't even take a moment to say how they had the legal right to do this, which they used to do. They used to do this shit and go under the 2002 AUMF, under the 2001 AUMF. In this case, they didn't even, because we're in a post-law world where they even feel the need to reference some law that allowed them to do this. And then one other point is, like, every once in a while these things need to happen, like I mean that in the cynical sense, but these things need to happen from our military-industrial complex, from our executive branch, from our government, in order to satiate this kind of deep, visceral need to use this force of our ridiculous military to exercise it, to prove its capabilities, and to allow the military-industrial complex to exert that force that, as Chris Hedges titled his book, gives them meaning. It is the force that gives us meaning. And so these things, and it almost doesn't even matter what the target is. Of course, they will jump up and down about, the reason for this target or that target. But that is just kind of a side note to the deep, libidinal nature of these fucking attacks, these explosions, this destruction of life and property in these other countries. This is kind of, I mean, in that way, it's kind of equivalent to like a international rape. It is just to exert power, to show that they have the power, and to abuse these other countries.
Absolutely. Great points. And I'm reminded of something John Kiriakou pointed out when he was speaking at the Venezuelan embassy when folks were holding space there. He was talking about these massive budgets, right? That, these massive military budgets that go out to the Pentagon. And then, of course, the CIA gets a budget, and literally like a budget to overthrow countries and sovereign governments and all of this other shit. And he talked about how he went into an office because he said there is actually an office that you go to if you want to overthrow a government.
Right. CIA office.
CIA. And so he went into that office and he was talking about like some counterterrorism efforts or something. And the guy just said, yeah, whatever, just take, $50,000 and go to Europe. And like, because they just have to use the money, right? Because if they don't use the money, then they have to...
The budget gets decreased the
right.
following year.
So this is like, I think it was a couple of years ago, the Pentagon, like it leaked the Pentagon was having like lobster dinners every night just because they had to...
In those last few, whatever it was, weeks before the end of the budget term, it was like lobster dinners at events and shit like that.
Because you just have to use the money. And this is the thing, like the Pentagon doesn't even ask for an increase in budget, but gets it consistently. Like Biden raised the Pentagon budget not because they fucking asked for it, but because he knows who his daddies are, and that's the fucking military industrial complex. So they have to spend this money, and so they have to order these bombs from Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and shit. And then you have them, you might as well fucking use them, right?
And this also gets to the fact that it is the military industrial complex that decides these things and chose to bomb right now and chose who to bomb right now. And so like Glenn Greenwald mentioned, let's entertain the idea that it was Biden. No, they came to Biden and said, here's who we're bombing. And then Biden walked out and says, here's who I'm bombing. So even if he weren't, a grandpa who's got his pants on backwards, even if that weren't the case, it's like that with every president for the most part. And now sometimes a president may get a hair up his ass and just to go run to the Pentagon and say, I want to bomb a certain people, and then they discuss it with him like Trump would do, and they try and, believe it or not, talk him down at times. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, this military-industrial complex comes to the president and says, here's who we're bombing. And then the president walks out and tells the American people that it was his choice. And the reason for this is to give the Americans the sense that we have made this decision. In that we supposedly, and let's not get into all the election garbage, but we supposedly selected Joe Biden and selected by selecting him, selected the people around him.
Right.
And so it's all designed to give the American people this illusion of choice so that we go, and I used to have a joke about this in my stand-up act, I'm steering.
I love this.
And it makes us feel like we made a choice to bomb Iraq and Syria because Biden made that choice and we selected Biden. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean I did, but you get the point. And it is this ridiculous charade. And all of our media, all of these wonderfully, and they are brilliant in that they're very good at their jobs. Mm-hmm. It's not like these guys are idiots.
Nope.
So, they all went to fucking Columbia and Yale and shit. And all of our media go, look at the choice that Biden has made, and here's why it was a good choice. And the unsaid thing is, and we chose Biden, so we made this choice. Mm-hmm. But of course, none of it is our choice. The military-industrial complex runs on its own, the same as it did under Trump, largely the same as it did under Obama, the same as it did under Bush, and we pretend as if we, the people, control it.
Yeah, and I actually think that that although we don't live in a democracy or a republic or whatever the fuck people want to call it, I do think it's an important point to highlight that. So if you see somebody wearing like a Joe Biden shirt, having that conversation of, you voted for this. This is what you voted for. You voted for more kids in cages. You voted for more bombs. You voted for more oil spills and more fracking. And I think that like those conversations are important to have because that connection to the choice that you make, because I do believe if, if enough people were to recognize the lesser of two evils as a fucking dumb choice, and it's not actually the lesser of two evil. It's like, would you like what flavor of oligarchy would you like? But it's still fucking oligarchy. It's still the military industrial complex lording over our lives, both domestically and of course internationally. But I think making that connection so that people recognize that, as Emma Goldman said, if voting changed anything, they'd make it illegal. I think that is an important connection to make so that people actually connect to their power in a way that has nothing to do with the voting booth. And this is something that that several organizers have talked about, is like connecting people with their agency that exists outside the confines of what the state condones. So the state doesn't condone you protesting, right? Unless you get that nice little permit and you tell the cops exactly what you're planning on doing. So you have to then engage in ways that the state doesn't condone. The state condones you at least attempting to vote. I mean, as long as you're, a white person, then yeah, please go ahead and vote.
They're working hard to not condone black people voting, but
right. But the point being that if people were to connect to the agency that exists outside of the confines of this system, then we would actually have agency, as opposed to people thinking they have agency by checking a box and some fucking, black box voting. That's not your agency. And even if it were, what you're likely doing, because you've probably fed into the whole lesser of two evil, is you're actually checking a box for war, famine, environment, ecocide, the genocide of people from South America to Yemen. And that has to be made clear. And I'm not the kind of person that can make things sound really nice, but I think, like, however people have these conversations, I think it's important to have them.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's why, and I get that this seems much small. What I'm about to say seems much smaller than acts of war in other countries, but what you're talking about, is basically what Peter Joseph has been calling in-system and out-system activism. In-system activism is the stuff that they condone and they agree with and they allow because it works with their system. It is not interrupting their machine. Out-of-system activism is the things that they do not condone because it does interrupt their machine. We're actually going to talk about some more out-system activism coming up in a moment. But beyond just activism, that's why I get excited, and I feel like it has so much meaning whenever you're doing something that is not the norm. And it doesn't necessarily mean illegal, but it is outside of what the system, our capitalist consumerist system, has built in and the way it wants you to behave. And so for example, just things like bartering your time. Like if you own a restaurant or you are a manager of a restaurant and you are on good terms with your a plumber or an electrician, and you say, hey, how about you fix my lighting and I'll give you a free meal at the restaurant downstairs. And he's excited and you're excited and it works out. It's like, do that every time you can do that and stay outside of what the system wants you to do. That is a positive, working towards kind of a mental state where we no longer abide by this system that is destroying our environment, destroying our world, destroying lives.
Right.
And each of those things is important, and that's part of the reason that I'm excited about. That's part of the reason that I'm excited about our solidarity fund we've been doing, which is a term we got from mutual aid. So I'm not claiming to be the first one to do this.
It's our little mutual aid project.
It's our little mutual aid funds, and the reason I'm excited, it's not like it's getting millions of dollars in it, but for those of you who watch the live stream on YouTube, you've seen us talk about it more because we talk about it more on there. But it's not getting millions of dollars to anybody, but it is outside what is expected from this system, what is expected from capitalism, what is expected from our consumerist world. And what we do is we take all the donations, not the LiberaPay, but all the donations from the Super Chat on YouTube, on Venmo, at Lee Camp. All of those donations are just forwarded 100%. We don't keep any of it, and it goes to people who, any of you out there who need a little help, if you contact us and say so. So if you email commoncensored@protonmail.com and you say, I need a little help, and the number we're able to give people has been around about $80. So we're not talking about life-changing amounts, but the reason it excites me, even though it's just a little bit of money to a few people here and there, is because it is outside of how this is supposed to work. When you do a YouTube live stream, it is supposed to be all of that money goes to keep the creator going, and we're lucky that we're in a position that we can do this. But I'm just saying,
that you all also support via things like LiberaPay, so that we can then take the live stream time to raise money for other folks, because folks are supporting us via LiberaPay. Right.
And so it all goes it goes forward. It's paid forward, and in that way, I feel like it's changing. It helps change the mental landscape in a bigger way than just the $80 to one person. If that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
I think you are. We'll have to wait and see if other people think you are, but I think you are.
Okay, cool. Good. So, in a minute, shall we move on to the next topic?
In a minute?
Yeah, I'm going to throw some other things out there.
Okay.
You have a music video coming soon. I hope you don't mind me taking a second to tell everybody, go watch a music video.
Well, you can't watch it yet.
No, soon.
Yes.
A few days.
So, again, sign up for my newsletter if you want to be kept abreast of when that's coming out. And you can sign up by just going to bit.ly/ that's LY / act out newsletter. I've also tweeted and put it up on Instagram, that link, so you can sign up there.
And the video will be on your site when it comes out? Is that right?
It will.
Okay.
It will be on my site. It'll be on my Vimeo.
So the site is artkillingapathy.com.
Yes.
So just definitely remember that one if you want to see the music video in a few days. If you do want to support this show, if you'd like to see this show keep going, as we were just talking about, that's liberapay.com/LeeCamp, LIBERAPAY.com/LeeCamp. That is the only one that goes to support the show. The other donations on Super Chat, on Venmo, those go towards people who need a little help. So that, key difference there. So keep that in mind. And I'm very excited to say we finally, despite the fact that Patreon destroyed, the Common Censored Patreon was gutted, we have just broken 100 supporters over at liberapay.com/LeeCamp. So if you'd like to see this,
y'all.
Thank you. If you'd like to see this show keep going, please head over there. Maybe throw in $1 or something. And, I mentioned check out the live stream for more stories. Assange, Mike Gravel, all of that's covered at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. And, if you are one of the people who needs a little help, that's commoncensored@protonmail.com. Email us there, and we do our best to help people out.
Yes, indeed. So, moving on. The UN High Commissioner released a report just recently on racial...
Sounds a little like a position in like Star Wars or something.
You know what? It kind of is, because just like Star Wars, it doesn't have any impact on our actual policy.
The Senate does not.
But it's
change Darth Vader's...
a great story.
The Senate had a lot of success stopping Darth Vader, I feel like.
Well, I meant like Star Wars' effect on our policy.
Oh, you meant our real world policy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's a cool story, and I'm not going to lie, I have a shirt that says Join the Rebel Alliance because I like it. But they're like, just like the UN, like there's no actual effect on our policy. But again, it's a good story. And the reason I'm sharing this Well, I'll tell you in a second after I tell you what the fuck it says. The UN High Commissioner's report on racial justice and equality calls for reparations. Quote, with regard to enslavement, the transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans and colonialism and their legacies.
This is the first time, I believe.
And they also say, quote, that in order to confront past legacies and take special measures and deliver reparatory justice, the states must, quote, make amends for centuries of violence and discrimination through wide-ranging and meaningful initiatives within and across states, including through formal acknowledgement and apologies, truth-telling processes, and reparations in various forms, end quote. So the reason I'm sharing this is because I feel like a lot of people, maybe not folks listening, but I feel like a lot of people think about reparations like it's this fringe idea that just some like crazy ass leftists have. But no, it's actually...
I'll be honest. I grew up with a little bit of that mindset when I first heard of it. I was like, excuse me, the people alive now are not the ones who were enslaved, okay?
Right,
That's how I used to talk. I'm glad I lost that accent.
Which is a common argument against reparations. I know
even like the really old ones weren't enslaved.
And the argument that the UN makes about this, the UN Human Rights Office, Mona Rishmawi, said, quote, we realize that a main part of the problem is that many people believe the misconceptions that the abolition of slavery, the end of the transatlantic trade, and colonialism have removed the racially discriminatory structures built by those practices. But we found that this is not true. And end quote. And this is something that I've, in my own political education, I've read several points that discuss this. Like when we talk about reparations, a lot of times folks focus, understandably so, on the transatlantic slave trade and on slavery itself. But the fact of the matter is that it's not like when slavery ended, Black folks were all of a sudden equal citizens.
You don't say.
And actually what prompted the writing of this report, this is something that the UN rights chief Michelle Bachelet said, quote, the status quo is untenable. Systemic racism needs a systemic response. We need a transformative approach that tackles the interconnected areas that drive racism and lead to repeated, wholly avoidable tragedies like the death of George Floyd. So this report was spurred on by the murder of George Floyd last summer. And so obviously, the UN was like, well, it's clear that this shit isn't over because we continue to see shit like this happen. And, they focus quite a bit on the United States, but they also talk about systemic racism in other countries, where people of African descent, which is how they phrase it, are subject to poverty, to violence, to state-sanctioned violence, that people who aren't of African descent aren't. And so I think that, this is something that has to be discussed when we talk about reparations. Like, are we actually just talking about slavery, or are we talking about Jim Crow? Are we talking about redlining, which didn't allow Black folks to get bank loans to buy homes or allowed them to live in certain neighborhoods? Segregation.
I wouldn't put that sentence in past tense.
Right. Well, yes, exactly. That's kind of the point, right? Segregation, which is still something that happens, though it's not official, right? Obviously, the recent fights about voting rights, like that's about Black people voting, okay? And anybody who says differently is a fucking idiot or they're in denial.
There's a massive multi-billion-dollar gap between the federal funding for predominantly Black public schools versus predominantly white public schools. So even though there's not official segregation, we still live in a country where many public schools tend to be more predominantly Black because of areas of the city, areas of, whatever the state. And so a recent study has found that those that are predominantly white get a lot more funding from the federal government.
Right. And even if you just look at things like the time it takes to get to school, like busing, for instance. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, but Black kids spend significantly longer getting to and from school. They are more likely to not have access to food, certainly not healthy food, once they're at school. There's, this new thing about trying to shame parents or even starve kids because they can't pay for their school lunches. All of this shit affects Black kids more than white kids. And of course, I mentioned the housing issue. Black folks are more likely to live in poor neighborhoods. They're more likely to live in sacrifice zones, corporate sacrifice zones, which have, toxic air, toxic water, toxic land. So literally, like, going to play outside could be a fucking death sentence. And so all of this shit combined.
You should have seen the jungle gyms when I was growing up. It was a death sentence. It's just metal and concrete. That was it.
That's true. Kids today have no idea the dodging of tetanus that we did growing up.
That was one of the games. Dodge the tetanus. That was it.
But so all of this combines to make the point that no, reparations aren't just about slavery. Yes, that's where the story begins, but this is a story that continues to this day. And so if we understand reparations as really the only way to monetarily address, to economically address the inequality that Black folks face, then we understand reparations as not just something that is about trying to trace your fucking family tree to see if your great-great-grandfather was a slave or not. It's about whether you, as a Black person, experience systemic racism. And yeah, if you live in this country, you do. So this is really an important point to highlight with regards to reparations. And of course, this is one conversation. And even as the UN points out, quote, reparations in various forms. So there's economic reparations. Then there's, different ways of acknowledging and trying to work through and work beyond the issues of systemic racism. Now, folks can make the point, and I'm not going to disagree with you, that as long as the United States exists as a country, you can't get rid of systemic racism. I totally hear that. I feel like I probably agree with that. But again, this is one of those issues that, kind of like universal health care, it's something that we can really fucking easily do. Right. I mean, reparations sounds like it's fucking crazy, but it wouldn't actually make a dent in our economy, certainly less than, bombing Iraq and Syria does. And so it's kind of like universal health care, where it's an issue that you can address right now to really mitigate the suffering of thousands, if not millions of people.
Yeah, it's like I don't believe our problems will actually be solved until we evolve past capitalism, but I also want to increase the minimum wage. Like, I get
right.
that these things are just moving in the right direction and not actually achieving the end goal, but I think it's very important. And what I hear you saying is it's an intergenerational trauma and assault. Mm-hmm. And just because the people that were enslaved aren't alive doesn't mean that it's not continuing to be passed down through generations. So, absolutely, it makes sense. But of course, people act like it's this utterly insane idea.
Right. And I think, again, this is why I'm sharing the UN High Commissioner's report, because I think it's important to show it's not a fucking fringe idea. The UN, which I obviously is not filled with a bunch of leftist radicals like me, even they are like, yeah, this is just something you should fucking do. So, pardon us. That's
sorry about that. That was a celebration chime.
Was it?
Yeah, you said something really important, and I was like, yeah.
Cool.
And so I got my tambourine out.
And although the UN report doesn't touch on this, and it's not part of this specific story, this is something that has to be addressed with regards to indigenous peoples as well.
That too, and let's also remember that today there are likely more people enslaved than there were in America under slavery.
You mean in prison?
No, I mean enslaved. There globally. There are
globally,
a lot of
I
slaves.
See. I see. I thought you meant in the United States.
There are both straight up slaves, and then there's people that are would go under the term probably indentured servitude, but ones they can't get out of. So it's essentially no different than slaves. I read an interesting article about, I think it went kind of viral, so it's possible a lot of people read it, but it was a writer for a mainstream outlet who said, growing up, my family had a slave. I'm still coming to terms with it. And she meant in America. Yeah. And basically they had come from, I can't remember which country, but, maybe Sri Lanka or something. And in their area, it was common for people that had enough money to hire a girl, or I think it was maybe almost always girls, from a nearby village where they were dirt poor, and basically allow them to have a life, so they would have a bed and a roof over their head and food and things like that. So it was common to leave your village an hour away and live with this family. The problem was the family then moved to America, took the girl with them, said, don't worry, we'll get you back here, and basically made it impossible for her to ever get back because they knew that it was illegal what they were doing. She was living with them. They weren't obviously telling the U.S. government about it. And, so it wasn't on taxes. It wasn't, she didn't have...
Well, they weren't paying her.
They weren't paying her except in her ability to live with them, here's your dinner and here's your bed. But that is slavery. And so this girl who was a normal middle-class girl in America realized once she got to her 20s, wait a second, and the woman was like her best friend as well. But wait a second, oh my God, we have a slave.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point as well. I think even just here in the U.S., there are more black men in jail than were slaves.
Slaves under slavery, yes, that is true. Okay, let's continue to some of the resistance we were talking about as the terminology that you can either call it Outsystem activism, or you can call it fucking with a man, but whatever term you choose to use.
And if you want to see a picture of this, please check out my Instagram or my Instagram at Radical Eleanor. I posted a picture of this. It's my new favorite picture. It's old folks and old hills resisting, and it's an action that happened this morning. This is June 30th that we're recording this. This morning, June 30th, in Bent Mountain, Virginia, which is close to Roanoke. Some old folks brought out their rocking chairs and tied down to a beautifully decorated car and blocked the entrance to an easement, which is for the construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the proposed pipeline.
Easement is a euphemism that makes it sound like it's easy and nice.
Right. I guess I should make it clear. An easement,
destruction.
An easement is basically like kind of where like a pipeline company sets up to destroy that ecosystem.
It's their preparation zone for destruction.
Right. So a lot of you'll oftentimes hear that protesters blocked access to the easement, protesters held space on the easement, et cetera, and that's because the easement is kind of like the ground zero where the construction equipment is gathered and where that construction kind of starts from. So and folks might recall, we've talked about Appalachians Against Pipelines a lot. This is a multi-year effort, and this is so fucking badass. They've been fighting this dumb, destructive, horrific fucking pipeline for years. And always like with incredibly creative and beautiful actions like the one that we've seen today. And if you want updates on what's been going on, then you can check out Appalachians Against Pipelines. And that's on Facebook, that's on Twitter, that's on Instagram. And it's really badass to see that, to see these actions continue, even though the tree sits, I believe we mentioned that on this show as well, the tree sits ended because they were forced out of the trees by law enforcement. The last time I checked the update, police and pipeline security were on the scene, but so far folks are still holding space, which is fucking awesome.
But for those who think you can't make a difference over 60 or over 70, check out these folks.
Yeah, and I also want to share a couple of quotes from them that I think is really powerful. One of them said, quote, "My action today is very much out of my comfort zone. I'm compelled to act because we are out of time. Protecting the health and safety of our water, air, and land is critical because our laws, regulatory agencies, and courts don't protect it." And then another, I don't know if it was the same person, but another person said, quote, "I am not a paid protester. I am an introvert who loves quiet places. I feel most at home observing the natural world's wonders. From the elegant mechanisms in a single cell to the majesty of a mountain range, nature is the best teacher, art, and entertainment. Although I grew up in a large city, I dreamed of living deep in the woods and was fortunate enough to enjoy that luxury. But one can never live deep enough in the woods to get away from greed, irreverence, and exploitation." Yeah, so these people are badass.
Damn straight.
And I also think, like, and one more quote I'll share. One of them said, "Each of us can do something for a better future. We retired seniors can most easily afford to take some time out of our lives so that we can try to leave our juniors a more livable planet." Now, of course, I recognize that not every senior is able to be on the front line, but it really proves that if you can be on the front line, it doesn't matter how fucking old you are. It doesn't matter what your background is, whatever. You can do something on those front lines. If you're not able to be on the front lines, then you can do shit that's not on the front lines. There's always a role to play. And I think the important thing is that we're playing that role, that we're fully showing up and stepping into that role. And again, if you want to see a picture of this, because the picture is so badass, they've got their little rocking chairs. It's adorable and badass at the same time, and very rarely do those two intersect. But check out my Twitter or my Instagram or Appalachians Against Pipelines on Instagram.
The Instagram is Radical Eleanor.
Yes, that's mine.
You can also see still frames with a music video.
That's true. Also wanted to just say real quick that there was this morning, there was an action against Line 3, the pipeline here in Washington, D.C., also in Waltham, I don't know, Waltham or Waltham, Massachusetts, where folks were occupying the Enbridge offices. Enbridge is the company that's behind the proposed Line 3 pipeline. And they've been, as of roughly an hour ago, they had been occupying those offices for 20 consecutive hours. And this morning in D.C., there was a march and basically a little rally to stop Line 3. So again, the fight against Line 3 continues, despite the fact that Biden, I believe it was last week, voiced his support for Line 3 publicly. I'm not sure if that was the first time, but he made it very clear that he supports this project.
He might have been saying Lime 3 because I think he likes limes in his water. So I don't know that he knew what he was saying.
Well, then Biden's puppeteers have announced their support for Line 3. And of course, this is not at all surprising, though we shouldn't lose our capacity to be disappointed. This is not something that was unexpected. And so the fights continue, and people are, fighting wherever they are. And I think this is another good moment to highlight that whether you're in Massachusetts and, hey, the Enbridge office is there, let's go fuck with them. Or, hey, we're in DC. We can make we can make sure that people are still paying attention by doing, some important media work with, the White House or the Capitol as a backdrop or something like that. There are different ways to continue to spread the word, to continue to uplift this point so that it doesn't get lost, even if you're not able to physically get to the Line 3 protests in Minnesota.
And I gotta say, the moments at protests like that, and I maybe haven't been to that many, but those are the moments where you feel alive, where you understand what you're fighting for, you're in touch with it, you're in touch with those who get it, and it's like, what is life about other than that? I mean, it's beautiful on the edge of disaster, which I honestly am not bringing this up to try and yet again pitch your music video, but it's kind of the point of Pyre, your song. It's this beauty, this understanding of what life is, what our meaning is here, while we're on the edge of the fire or the fight or the destruction. So,
thanks. Also, just a quick update. I just saw this 9 minutes ago. Activists have blocked the entrances to the White House, like not the doors, but the driveways.
Yeah, probably the roads.
The road entrances.
Because nowadays with the cage around it, those are probably the only remaining like entrances are the driveways.
Right. And they're not like, if you've never been to DC, they're not like the driveways that you have outside your house. They're these like militarized entrances that are relatively far back from the house itself. But still, that's really badass. And apparently, there are also indigenous activists who are round dancing as they block the entrances. So that's fucking cool. So you can keep an eye out on that if you follow the hashtag StopLine3 on Twitter. Also, stopline3.org is the website to get updates.
Take that, Joe Biden. How's he going to get out to get to his mahjong game, huh? Fuck you, motherfucker.
I was going to say bridge, but yeah. Potato.
Okay, so I wasn't sure I was going to do this, but it's looking pretty good at the moment. So I'm making...
He's going to belly dance.
I'm making... My belly's looking pretty good at the moment. Yeah, that's how every belly dance should begin. Hey, folks, an hour ago I wouldn't have shown you this, but right now I think we're going to get through this. It looks all right. All right, so this is a top secret announcement.
Drum roll, please.
That only you folks are getting. I'm not even... All right. I'm not even talking about it on my live stream or anywhere else right now. This is a top secret project Eleanor and I have been working on that is still in beta. It's still being worked on, so don't be hypercritical, but I want you guys to check it out. It's called radindiemedia.com, RADINDIE media.com. And the idea behind it is that we wanted a place that you could treat like the front page of a newspaper, an online newspaper, but it's the front page of a fucking awesome, radical, leftist online newspaper. And there is another difference. One stop. And there is another difference that makes this not like we're trying to create a left-wing Huffington Post or something. The other difference is that we do not. These articles and videos and podcasts are not on our site. It just links you to their site. So to their shite and their site. To all of the above. You get good shite at our site. That's our new logo. Or slogan. So it really is just a way to let you know where cool shit is being talked about and said, and cool coverage and journalists and things like that. And basically, we're grabbing the content from the Gray Zone, Mint Press, Breakthrough News, It's Going Down, Eleanor's stuff, my stuff, Brian Becker's The Socialist Program, Shadowproof, and
Breakthrough News, the Gray Zone.
I said Breakthrough.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I said Gray Zone. Listen up, please.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. You're right. I was actually just looking at the website,
I was kind of bored. But no, we're grabbing all those so you can treat it like the front page, and then when you click on them, it takes you to their site. So it's just here you go. And this is not a good business model, which is the goal, is to not be a good business. We are trying to create something where people can get to all those articles. We are not trying to make this a one-stop shop so that we can become the Huffington Post, because A, that sounds tiring, and B, I don't want to fucking do that, because that's that's the capitalist model.
Right.
Keep people on your site so that you make money with ad dollars. There's no ads or anything on the site. So that is generally the idea, and we're not doing that. So, but as I was saying, this is very much in beta. We've just created, but I'm telling just you select folks, because we do want your feedback if you can be nice. And You can email commoncensored at protonmail.com if there's anything you're thinking, like you want to see another source on there or something like that. But keep in mind, this is very new and very, you don't necessarily need to be shouting it from the hills yet. Wait till it really looks perfect. But yeah.
But yeah, and this is especially, a lot of folks have emailed us and me over the past few years asking like, hey, do you have a list of outlets that you trust? And this is really that place. It's a list of outlets that are curated based on the fact that they have consistently, and it's both outlets and individual journalists, that they have consistently not only put out important stories, but they have backed up that investigative journalism with facts that you can easily source. And you can look at the sources, you can find out where they're getting that information from. Nothing is fucking shadowy. Nothing is like, well, it appears that Russia or
an anonymous CIA source.
Right. There's none of that bullshit. This is all very powerful, very legit investigative journalism and reporting. And so these are the sources that we go to and we trust for all of our work. And so, folks who have asked us this question over the years, well, this is where you go. And of course, if there are others that you'd like to see, you can always reach out to us. There is a contact email. That's radindiemedia@protonmail.com. And there's also a donate page that's just for Rad Indie Media. If you'd like to help us keep that site going in that capacity, you're welcome to donate there as well.
The other reason we created this is because of the immense suppression that is going on. So for example, like Mint Press has been having more and more trouble on Facebook, and it very well could happen in the coming weeks or months that Mint Press is just deleted from Facebook.
Right.
And if you were a Mint Press fan, like we are, then you might all of a sudden not really know where to find Mint Press, or, unless you're really actively going to every different site every morning. Okay, I'm typing in Gray Zone now. I'm typing in Mint Press now. You might not know where to find their stuff or to find all of the stuff together. So the goal of this was, look, they could maybe they'll delete my Facebook tomorrow, but hopefully you'll keep checking out radindiemedia.com and you'll keep seeing the stories from these sources that are being suppressed and crushed. So it's hopefully a way to at least minimize the damage.
Yeah, and it's also, about media literacy, and it's about having these outlets combat the propagandization and the corporate bullshittery that we're inundated with constantly, and really highlighting the need for media literacy and using this site as an example of what media literacy could look like. And obviously that means look into what we've posted on that site, look into things and get into the habit of checking sources, of checking what you read. And I think that these are great opportunities to do that. So, yeah.
And it also, I'm sure some of you are going to be like, what about this one and this one and this one and this one and this one? And we understand it doesn't have everything you could ever want, but we're doing our best, and we're trying also to keep it manageable. You'd be like, oh, well, why doesn't it have this Mint Press article? It doesn't grab every article from every outlet because that would be too many. So it's just grabbing, an assortment of the good ones, and hopefully can become like a front page you check, front page of left indie awesome media that you kind of check every day, every morning or something.
Yeah.
So we only have a couple of minutes left. Should I just do the short Panquake news story and then wrap it up?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
I don't know why I sounded like Rain Man there, but yeah.
Yeah. Panquake and finish. Panquake and finish. I want maple syrup with my pancakes. So many of you know, and I've done live streams on Panquake and everything, so I'm not going to give a long explanation. But they are, as we're trying to build the alternative media centers that will allow us to keep going as the suppression gets oppressive, to rhyme. Panquake is developing, and it's not done yet, so there's not a lot to see yet, but it is going to be an alternative to Twitter that's kind of unstoppable. It's on blockchain. It doesn't have ads. You can't be suppressed unless, of course, you're posting child porn, in which case you'll be deleted. But it's a far safer, far better, doesn't sell your data outlet, but similar to Twitter, but with some other functions. That's cool. And anyway, it's growing, and it's it's designed. Susie Dawson's creating, but with Bill Benny from the the NSA whistleblower and others are working on it, and it could really be impressive. And it apparently, despite having not launched yet, and even the beta version probably won't be till like November or something, despite the fact it hasn't launched yet, is clearly despised by the mainstream social media platforms and probably the mainstream elite beyond that. So it's already being suppressed. It's already being attacked. They've had, Facebook has deleted their stuff. They've had Twitter accounts deleted and then reinstated. But a new step was taken this past week where PayPal cut off Panquake, cut them off from being able to receive future funds, and even is not giving them the funds that they already had, because when someone donates in PayPal, it's kind of held in PayPal until you withdraw it. So they're not giving them those funds. On top of that, many people, I think, signed up to be recurring donors to Panquake via PayPal, and so it would also shut down all of that. Now,
this is fucking remarkable, because I feel like the only place that I heard this happen to before this is WikiLeaks.
Yeah. This is the only time. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some others that people didn't raise a stew about, like some drug cartel or something. But maybe
It'd be amazing paying for cocaine on PayPal. It's hilarious.
Maybe I'm wrong, and literally the only other one is WikiLeaks. But when WikiLeaks was first being attacked, our government, along with other national governments, got together and basically pressured PayPal into cutting off WikiLeaks, which they did, and holding on to their funds and not letting them withdraw them. And they're now doing the same thing to Panquake, a social media platform that hasn't even launched yet. I mean, it's fucking incredible.
Remarkable. Like, you're that afraid of a social media site that allows people to post things? Like, what the fuck? That is amazing. Absolutely mind-boggling.
They're doing everything they can to try and shut it down. And if you want more of the news and more info on all of this, go to panquake.com, which, as far as I know, can't be shut down. So you can get all that at panquake.com. But, I mean, this just goes to show the desperate need of alternatives to these platforms. Mm-hmm. And here we are using LiberaPay because Patreon fucked us. Like, each of these platforms, you have to create a new one, while we've said this many times, while using the tool of Facebook, because it is a massive tool, and Zuckerberg's a massive tool as well, using these. I didn't get a laugh because you weren't listening, but that's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm still. I was looking at panquake.com and I got distracted. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What did you say? Can we go back?
Here's the thing. As a comedian, I need the laugh.
I'm so sorry.
Or my soul hurts. You hurt my soul.
I'm sorry. Can you do it again?
Okay.
I'll pay attention.
Okay. We've said many times that you continue to use Facebook because it's a major tool, and Zuckerberg's a major tool as well. Thank you. I got the laugh I needed.
You're welcome. I'm sorry.
But you keep using it because it's silly to throw away something that is still, even with the suppression, is a massive tool for activism, for organizing. But you've got to build the alternatives. And Panquake's one of the alternatives. And hopefully Rad Indie Media will one day be one of the alternatives. And you've got to build these up because we are going to be attacked and are being attacked at every level. And here is PayPal cutting off Panquake.
Amen. Preach, brother.
So that being said, I will wrap up there. I think this episode had a little of everything. It had the good, the bad. It had laughter. It had tears. It had a lot of sweat on my part.
I pissed myself.
There you go.
Yeah.
Every liquid has come out of us.
Well, not every. But that's for later.
I definitely orgasmed when I talk about how awesome your music video is going to be. So
it was very quiet. I'm impressed.
I've been practicing. So. That being said, let's see. To run through all this again, the new video will be at artkillingapathy.com. You can also sign up all over there if you haven't gotten the new EP. That's at artkillingapathy.com. It's called No Solo. Also, if you are struggling, you can email commentcensored at protonmail.com if you need a little help. And if you want to keep this show going. If you feel like you've gotten just $1's worth, go to liberapay.com/leecamp, liberapay.com/leecamp. And thank you to our 100, out of the thousands of you that listen to this, 100 people keep this show going. And you guys are fucking awesome. So thank you guys.
Amen. Until next time,
Keep fighting.
act out.